Pause for effect. Excellent. Right, everyone, thanks for joining us. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Children and Young People's Social Care and Service Scrutiny Panel. Can I remind all participants that normal rules of procedure apply? For example, comments and questions need to be directed through the chair. As we are meeting virtually, proceedings may take slightly longer, so your patience is appreciated. As per our virtual meeting procedures, if questions have been received prior to the meeting, I will call on the relevant member at the appropriate time to raise that question. If you're invited to speak, please state your name and be as specific as possible about which issue you are speaking about. Whilst members of the public can view this meeting via YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on the proceedings. As this meeting is being live streamed, can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this? Thank you. And so we'll start with agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Uddin, but Councillor Philippa Story is substituting for him today, and also from Councillor Hill and Councillor Bell is substituting today.
Excellent, thank you. Move to item number 2, which is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Excellent, excellent. Item agenda number 3 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of March 2020. I do hope everyone's read up on them, with it being so long ago. And can we? Is everybody happy with those minutes? Excellent. So that takes us speedily on to item number 4. We've invited Sue along to give us an overview and structure of children's services, with everything changing as it is and everything in a constant motion. We've asked to have a sort of a definitive report on what is happening under what banner. So can I hand over to Sue? Is that okay, Sue? She's gone. There she is. Hi, Sue. So we have no sound. Your mic is off, but we're not getting any sound.
It was working.
Yeah.
Better?
That's better. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll try again. Third time lucky. Okay. So as part of the papers, you'll find a structure chart of it's the top level of children's services. So this is predicated on the review that the Chief Exec, Tony Parkinson, did. And he asked us to re-look at the higher level children's services structure. So you'll see that, and I'll explain it a little bit more in a minute as we go further down. But there you'll see me as the Executive Director of Children's Services. Now, we did have 3 directors in Children's Services. One of those, Ian Wright, has moved to be the Director of Finance. So rather than put in another director, I decided that we needed to do something different in terms of driving the improvement journey, a sort of engine room for the improvement journey. So in that practice improvement hub, we've got the lead for transformation. Now that is a post which will really look strategically at all the changes that we need to make. Now currently that post is vacant, and I'm not going to fill it completely because we do have somebody working part-time on some similar projects. So I'm going to bring him across and pick up some of the work from there. Under there, going further down, we've got Celinda Schuhan. She's the Head of Strategic Support Services. She's got lead for performance and governance. So she gets the data, looks at it, interprets it into performance, writes in conjunction with the heads of service the performance reports, the reports that specifically go to the improvement board, but also are available and presented to to other committees. Under Cylinder, you'll see Paula Jempson. Paula Jempson is probably the audit queen of the world. She audits and manages audits that are done by other parts of the service. Audit is a particularly crucial activity at all stages and in all authorities, but for us, it's a crucial way of getting to know the work that's out there. We've been doing audits team by team. We've had a sample of every social worker's audits to have a look at where they are in their practice. From that, we've developed team plans. We've also got a small group of auditors who are picking that up and supporting Paula as we go along. So just before I came on this call, Paula and I audited a case between us. So all levels of the structure need to be doing some audits. And so we looked at one case of a child who was looked after. Regrettably, we found that, some of the practice wasn't where we needed to be. So I immediately rang the head of service and said, this case needs supervising and it needs supervising tomorrow. So there's really some very quick wins from audit, but there is also some longer term progression at looking where our practice is improving or specifically where it needs to improve. So that you can see is a sort of improvement hub. We've got business support in there and some project management as well, but principally the function of there is to drive the improvement journey, not to do all of the improvement journey, but to drive the improvement journey. And they report to me directly, and the reason for that is I'm the lead for the improvement journey, I'm the lead for children's services, but I need to keep a very, very tight eye on how we're progressing with the children's improvement plan. So that's why they're sat there. If we go to the left-hand side, you'll see that we've got Rachel Farnham as the Director of Children's Care. Up until a week ago, that was Catherine Parry, who is in the post as an interim, as is Rachel. Unfortunately, Catherine left us about 10 days ago through mutual agreement, and Rachel has stepped into the post, probably as an interim, yes, but for a very short period of time, because the advert for the permanent Director of Children's Care is going out imminently. Okay, so if we go down, first of all, the left-hand side underneath Rachel, you'll see Gail Earl, who's the head of early help and prevention. So she works particularly with the children and young people who don't yet meet the statutory level for social work involvement. So they're looking at children and young people and their families, supporting them in a preventative way, supporting them so that they don't need to have a social worker, really. They don't need that statutory social work intervention. In Middlesbrough, we have a very strong early help offer, and certainly I can see the difference that it makes. So when a contact comes into our front door, into our match, our multi-agency children's hub, a decision is made about whether it goes into whether nothing happens at all, whether it goes into early help, or whether it goes into statutory social work. So there's those three, in basic terms, there's those three avenues for work to be taken into the service or a decision made that it won't. So that's a really important role. And as I say, it's a very successful one in Middlesbrough. And in the Ofsted report from the inspection last October, it certainly was one of the better parts of was the better part, I would say, of the service. Underneath Gail, you'll see that we're having a change. Pauline Lorraine was our head of service until the 7th of August. She's recently left, and so she left actually, although it says the 7th of August, and she gave us 6 weeks notice. Unfortunately, she decided to leave after 3 weeks, which left a bit of a gap. However, I've got somebody called Ben Short, who's a very experienced interim safeguarding manager, and he's going to be joining us from the 1st of August. So there's a 2 to 3 week gap, which we're covering with other heads of service. And I'm not, I have confidence in Ben and his practice. He interviewed very well and his references are good. Underneath that square, you'll see Paul Rudd. He's the head of our residential homes and fostering and futures for families. So he is the responsible individual for our children's homes. Children's homes are obviously a part of children's services, but some of the responsibilities around them are quite different. In that, if you're a registered manager of a children's home, you say, not me as a director, not the director of children's care, you have responsibility for who goes into that home and who doesn't. There's lots of things to consider, like, for example, the mix of children, the dynamics, the behaviours, the genders, all of those things need to be looked at. And it is the registered manager's responsibility to make that decision because they are answerable directly to Ofsted. Then Paul is actually the responsible individual. So he is the manager that has oversight of what the residential managers are doing. But it's a slightly different way of working. And of course, residential children's homes have a different way of being inspected. He's also head of service for fostering. That's quite a new role for him, but it's a provider service. So we've got looked after children in residential homes, looked after children in fostering. So you can see those two roles fit well together. And the other thing that he's head of service for is Future for Families. That's our No Wrong Door project. I think you probably have had a presentation on No Wrong Door before. If not, as we move through the agenda, it may be something that you want to consider. It's a project that we're supported by or overseen by North Yorkshire. It's a tried and tested model, an edge of care model. So it's got some respite beds, it's got supported lodgings, it's got foster carers, it's got resource workers. So it's all wrapped up in a hub, a No Wrong Door hub, called, in here we're calling it Futures for Families. We're in a very exciting stage because we expect it to go live in the next few weeks. We're getting the keys to the building imminently. So as I say, it was paused a bit for COVID, and of course contractors weren't on site, but there's been a lot of catching up. So over the next few weeks, we'll have that service up and running. All of the staff have been recruited now, and they are being trained. So we don't have to do any of that. That's all ready and primed. If we move to the sort of right-hand side of that column, we've got Amanda Richardson. Now, she's the head of Match. That's our multi-agency children's hub and the assessment service. You remember that we had a match that was between us, between Middlesbrough and Redcar in Cleveland. We disaggregated that service. The reason being that and the commissioner visited it to sort of check out our decision making, and he very clearly said, if you want to make the pace that you need to make Middlesbrough in terms of improving outcomes for children, you need to disaggregate. It wasn't that the match couldn't be fixed, the joint one, but it would have taken too long. So we've disaggregated, so we now have our own match, and that sits here in Middlesbrough House, and it's overseen by Amanda, who also oversees the assessment service. And when work comes into the match and there's a decision that it needs a social work intervention, that work then goes into the assessment service and they complete a single assessment. So that's the role of the match, and that's the role of the assessment service. The match has got a multi-agency involvement. We've got education involvement, we've got health oversight, and we've also got police available as well. So it is a multi-agency team. Under that, you'll see Stuart Williams, who's the head of children looked after and corporate parenting. So he has in his remit our 3 children looked after teams, and they will be doing the work around supporting children who are looked after. And making sure that they achieve permanence. If you remember, permanence was absolutely something that in the inspection we really, really need to improve on. And in fact, we still need to improve on it. And we are still working to make sure that we've got a good permanence strategy and a pathway for children to achieve permanence. He's also got care leavers in his remit. So he has oversight of the work that we're doing with care leavers. And that work in some instances can be with young people up to the age of 25. We are expected to keep in touch with our care leavers until the age of 25. Although, of course, some of the content and some of the work that we're doing, we can become less frequent. Under Stuart, you'll see Siobhan Davis. Siobhan is the head of the RAD unit, we call it, but it's the unit of officers who chair child protection conferences and who chair reviews for looked after children. The role of the IRO, as it's an independent reviewing officer, is independent, but they are employed by the local authority. So they have to have, and they should have, influence and challenge and monitoring and oversight of the work that we're doing. One of the things that's happening a bit more now, but wasn't happening so much at the time of the assessment, of the inspection, is that the IROs should challenge. And if a social worker isn't doing something that they really should be doing as part of the child's plan, then the independent reviewing officer should escalate it to the team manager. And if the team manager doesn't do it, it should be escalated to a head of service. If the head of service doesn't do it, then it's escalated to me. And technically, it should be escalated to the chief exec if it's not done by me. But I think if it's not done by me and it gets escalated to the chief exec, my P45 will swiftly follow. And ultimately, the IROs do have license to go to CAFCAS, that's the Court Advisory Service, and to take a case into court. That's very, very rare and should be very, very rare. But you can see that they do have certain powers, I suppose you'd call them, to ensure that children are receiving the service that they need as looked after children. But it hasn't been working as well as it should. And also they chair child protection conferences. I'm not saying they don't chair them well. What I'm saying is the monitoring of the work is not quite where we need it to be yet. And then under Siobhan, we've got Susie Kitching. Susie is our principal social worker. The principal social worker is a post that you have to have. It's a mandatory post. And she has oversight of practice. So she's the sort of lead for practice development. She's been very involved in putting on some excellent training for social workers. Some of you may remember the clarity and confidence training that we've had. And she really is the lead for practice development. So in a nutshell, really, that's the social care element of children's services. One of the things that I've been trying very, very hard to be very, very clear about is that we are one children's service. And so that's, so we've got social care there, we've got the improvement work, and of course we've got education and partnerships as well. And as Rob's with us, I'll ask him to just take us through that element of our directorate.
Happy to, thank you. Rob Brown, Director for Education and Partnerships. So within that section, you can see that we've got Sarah, Trevor, Claire, Kim, and Caroline. And the delineation is fairly easy to make out. So we've got Sarah and Caroline and Trevor working within education, Claire within adult learning, and Kay within partnerships and YOS. It's possibly important to note that there is other inspection regimes that play within children's services. So within Kay's area, youth offending inspected by Her Majesty's Inspector of Probation, and we've recently been inspected, so it was last year, and that area came out as a good. So we've got within the youth offending and the partnerships, so the safeguarding arrangements and the children's trust, etc. Within Claire's area, that was just inspected. We've had a good run of inspections recently. Everyone's had a good look at us. So within Claire's area, it was inspected by Ofsted, and within adult learning, so community learning. And that also was a good. That was at the end of last year. And then within education, we've got Caroline, which was SEND, and all of the associated areas, including quite recently CWD, which I'm sure Sue will cover. But we've got a move where Gail has moved across to Early Help's moved across to children's care, and children with disabilities moved across or moving across to this area. Within Caroline's area, so you can see that we'll build that continuum of support for young people with additional need. So what we've got within that area is SEND, that was inspected 2017 with a written outcome, was a written statement of action. More recently, it's been re-inspected with much more positive outcome. Within Sarah's area, it's the staff such as the school advisors and EMAT, etc., Ethnic Minority Achievement Team. There isn't an inspection area in that part, but recently Sarah's inherited all of our children's centres and nurseries. And nurseries are inspected, and our local authority nurseries are good and outstanding. Finally, within Trevor's area, it's children missing from education, admissions, and the new school. So there's no inspection regime there, other than virtual schools as part of the Ofsted ILACS inspection. And within Trevor's area, it's the new school, particularly of interest there, which was in the news, I think, last week, talking about the plans for September. So we've got, like I said, 3 heads of service focused within education, and then we've got adult learning, and then we've got partnerships and youth offender. Thanks. You're on mute, Sue.
I will get used to this one day. I really, really, really will. Okay, so that's the overview of children's services. Sort of to head of service level, we have got one service manager on there who is the Future for Families, but I've explained what Future for Families is. And technically, Paula is a service manager around quality, but that role is so important that it absolutely needs to be on here. I hope you can sort of see what we're trying to do. There is crossover, of course. Prevention can cross over into both areas. The virtual school is both education, but also for looked after children. Futures for Families has a huge potential to support children across the piece, really. The IROs, of course, they take into account education in all of the work that they do, all of the reviews that they have with children, and education colleagues feed into those reviews. So there are some, obviously, some, not gaps exactly, but some areas that are not as strong at the moment, and that's principally because Pauline Lorraine's left us, and we have a gap between her leaving and Ben coming in. And when you have a gap, you always have to be careful that children, because children can suffer when there's gaps. However, we have quite robust covering arrangements to make sure that happens and happens well. And Ben will be able to hit the ground running. One of the things that you should expect from an interim is no induction or very little induction, like where's the kettle and where's the facilities, really. Interim should be able to come in, hit the ground running as experienced people and take on probably more than you'd expect from a head of service who's still growing through and learning how to be a head of service. So that's really should be your ask of interim workers throughout the service. Rachel has stepped in as Director of Children's Care. She's experienced in working with children, experienced in improvement work. So I have every confidence that she will do well, but it is only for her day 6 in that role. So that's where we are. But as I say, the interviews, the adverts going out for the interviews imminently. Yeah, so that's it. Other than you probably know that I've agreed to become permanent, and I think that will take effect within the next couple of weeks. So hopefully in the very near future, you'll have a permanent director and a director, executive director and director of children's care. And with Rob as permanent education and partnerships, you should have very soon a permanent top directorate level.
Thank you, sir. Are you finished? Sorry.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Excellent. We're gonna have a few questions on this. Is that okay? So I'm going to bring Councillor Walker first. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just wondering. Thank you very much, Sue. It's nice to see all that explained, and I've been writing all over that chart you give me, so I'll have to print it off again now, I expect, and redo it. One of the things I was going to ask you is, are we running at full complement yet with our social workers? And also the ones that we've got, what's their caseloads like? Because that has been, I think, in the past, one of the problems is the fact that our social workers, it's the experience. Some are less than 2 years, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but please, please put me right if necessary. But is there a situation where the most experienced social workers are getting more people, more caseloads, as opposed to the ones who are less experienced, while they try and catch up? And is that causing a problem, or can it cause a problem in the future? So I just want to know where we are on that, please.
Of course. Have I got the mute off? Yes, I think I've managed to do that this time. Okay, you're absolutely right. Newly qualified social workers, we call them ASYEs, and their assessed and supported year of practice, should have much lower caseloads, depending on where they are in that first year. So you'd start off with 5 cases, 10 cases. Then by the end of their first year, they should be sort of 15, 16, 17. That's been quite hard for us, really, to keep the caseloads as low as that. And of course, you are also sometimes coming up against their keenness to support the teams and take on work. I've been very clear with them that that's quite risky for them, because team managers should be allocating work to them that they know that they can learn from. Caseloads are higher than we would like them to be at the moment across the piece, but particularly in safeguarding and care planning. We had a whole tranche of work come in right in January early this year, because our thresholds were low. Sorry, our thresholds were too high in the inspection, so we had to lower them, which has meant that more work has come into the system. So the assessment service for a while was under a lot of pressure. It's still under pressure, but a lot less pressure than it was. And this whole hump of work is now in the safeguarding and care planning. So there are several reasons for high caseloads in there. One is because more work has been coming in. And the other is because we've had changes of workers. And the other is because work hasn't been progressing as well as it should have been. So there's been work that has really got stuck in that service. So it's stilted up to some extent. Now we know that teams have not been progressing the work as well as they should do. And that comes back to the whole permanence thing about getting children to their forever homes as quickly as we possibly can. So we were about to have a lot of unallocated cases, which is not acceptable. So what we've done is allocate those cases. So some of our experienced social workers, and I'm talking about experienced social workers here, are up to 30 cases. That's a lot. We've only done that with the experienced social workers. Some of the things that we're doing to mitigate against that is that we've got extra resource workers in there. So they've been loaned from the contact centres, so they are working with social workers in that team. So if you've got a resource worker working with a social worker, that just takes off some of the tasks. And we're also putting a business support worker into every team in the safeguarding and planning service, so they can strip away some of the tasks that are not social work tasks. So, for example, you don't have a social worker stood by the photocopier, you have a business support to do those. Now, we are where we are. We haven't, I am determined, and I have been all the way through this, that you don't throw social workers at a problem, because if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. What we've got to do, counsellors, is improve our practice. So some of the work that's been stuck in the system, we have to hold our nerve and say to social workers, let's help you, support you, supervising you to get through things, and to get through their casework. So that's what we really need to do, and we need to do that as swiftly as we possibly can. And that's about learning. And that is, we have to be very careful that we don't have unallocated cases, because that's the worst possible scenario. And we were facing that scenario. So, yeah, that's where we are. Have we got our full complement? Actually, at the moment, we have managed to cover some sick leave, because normally in other parts of the council, sick leave is not covered. We have. managed to cover some sick leave, and we've got the business support staff going in. In essence, we probably have more than a complement of social workers, more than our complement of social workers at the moment, because we have brought in a team from Innovate, which is an organisation that puts together social work teams and manages them into
Give so a few seconds to catch up. Still got the little yellow triangle, so I think
it'll come back. Yeah, it happens, I think, quite a bit.
Okay,
she's back.
Back.
Excellent.
So Innovate are providing us with a social work team with 3 specific purposes. One is to look at some of our external residential placements. You will know that we've got some children who are quite far away from Middlesbrough. You will know that we've got children whose work hasn't been progressed as much as it should have been done. And also some of these external residential placements are extremely expensive. Now, if children need that resource, then of course we'll pay for it. But we really do feel that we've got some children in placements where they don't need to be anymore. So Innovate are going to be working with these children to see, can they come back to Middlesbrough? If they can't go home, and it may not be safe for them to go home, can they come back to their community, maybe in a foster placement? So bringing our children back into Middlesbrough, back into their own communities. They're also going to be supporting fragile placements, which are at risk of breaking down. And they're also going to be looking at, can some children who are now looked after actually be cared for by special guardians? So will foster carers, for example, become special guardians so that child is then permanent? Because foster carers aren't parents. They don't have parental responsibility, but special guardians do. So that child is secure with that carer. So that's a team that we've brought in. But we do have more agency staff than we had when I first started, but we do have a bit more experience. This is a really tricky time in the improvement journey. It's time to hold our nerve, to make sure that we're getting social workers supporting social workers to improve their practice. And there's also something about our social workers, team managers, heads of service, everybody, are they with us for the improvement journey? Yeah, it's going to be a 3-year journey. So are they people who really want to be here and commit to working in Middlesbrough? And really, for me, if people want to be here, are committed to be here, you're 3/4 of the way to success, So that was a rather long answer to quite a short question, but I hope it's been helpful.
Yeah. Can I just add two seconds onto that? Innovate, is that costing us more money, or will it be absorbed into the service areas budget as it is? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
It's invest to save. So some of it we've badged against COVID money, because some of the hump that we've got is about, COVID, because things obviously slowed down a bit in COVID, but it's invest to save. So I haven't got in my head how much the team costs. But if you think that an external residential placement costs £5,000 a week, I think the costs go from like £3,300 up to £8,000 a week. You don't have to, move children on from many of those placements before you've really covered the money that a team would be. So working with the finance director, it's an invest to save initiative.
Thank you very much for clarifying that, and I totally agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there anybody else that has any questions on the structure before we move on? No? Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So thanks, Rob. One of the most important things to know is who's got all the who. So as it's changing all the time, we really do need to know who we're asking the questions of. I know we're scrutinising. So guys, we'll move on to item number 5, which is setting the Scrutiny panel's work programme for 2021. What I will say is, Sue and Rob, could you hang around? We're going to put the recommendations of the to the panel, but I would like both your opinions on it after we put it to the panel. Is that okay?
Of course.
Brilliant, brilliant. So everybody's got a copy of what took place in the informal meeting when we discussed possible topics. What I will say is, this scrutiny panel is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I'll continue to say it, we're it's unprecedented territory when it comes to scrutiny, because we're not scrutinizing something that has been, we're scrutinising something that's ongoing continually, following the Ofsted and the Commissioner coming in. So what I will say is that we are sort of an overview panel this year, and we're basically overviewing the changes that are taking place within children's services and making sure that we've got a grip on what's going on and we've got the knowledge. So what I'll do is I'll ask. I won't go over I won't go over them one by one, but if there's any of the councillors on the panel that would like to talk or put forward one of these ideas now, we'll go over that one by one. Is that okay? Everyone agree? Excellent. So if there's anybody who wants to, we've got a list of ideas which I'll shout out the topic suggestion title, and then if anybody wants to speak on any of them, they can. The first one was the South Tees Multi-Agency Children's Hub. One of the other ideas was the corporate parenting strategy and going over that. Youth services was brought up. Commission services across children's services was another topic. Children's services, services for children with disabilities, custody and pace with beds. That was Councillor Wright, I do believe he brought that one up.
Yeah, do we speak now, Chair? Sorry, or do we wait till you finish?
Sorry, Councillor, I'm just going to go through the title. I'm just going to do the titles and not the explanations, and then what I'd like if the member who put these forward would like to speak further on them from the informal meeting, and then we'll go from there. So we've got a reasoning and an understanding behind why the panel member wants to bring this forward as a topic. Ensuring safety and appropriate support of children was another one. Sufficiency and permanency, which we've talked about already. Children's residential home provision and edge of care was another. The No Wrong Door programme, Future for Families, was another. I can't hold the paper. The DFE longitude. Can somebody? What does that say? That
Longitude of study.
Excellent study of local authority and children and finance and family social workers, and finally locality working. I practiced that one earlier. I still couldn't get my tongue around it. And locality working. So if the relevant councillor wants to put forward that topic, and build a case for that being our topic for the year, we'll start discussing that now, if that's okay. Who would like to go first? Councillor Cook.
Just to clarify, are we having one topic or several?
Chair, can I just say something there? I think the report that members have received at paragraph 5 is a list of the suggestions that were put forward at a previous informal discussion that we had with the panel members for ideas of not necessarily a full review topic, but areas that the panel could focus on this year. Historically, when each scrutiny panel sets its work programme, it would pick 2 topics to fully review. I think this year, as the chair quite rightly said, this panel's in a bit of a different position, obviously following on from Ofsted and the fact that we have this 3-year improvement plan in place. I think it's going to be important this year for the panel have an oversight and to be involved with the improvement plan. So it might not necessarily be that we undertake a full review of the topics that have been suggested, and it might become more apparent at the time as to how far things have progressed as part of the improvement plan, whether we need to do that or not. So they were just suggestions that have been put forward. People might have other suggestions, and we would really welcome Sue and Rob's input on this to help the panel prioritise what the priorities should be for this year. And I think permanency seems to be coming out quite strongly. Obviously, the disaggregation of the South Tees match to find out how that's going since the arrangements have changed. Possibly the locality working, maybe having some something around the youth services, and an input into the corporate parenting strategy. So it's up to members to discuss those issues and to come up with the ideas that they would like to focus on. And then we'd invite the officers to give their input as well, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I mean, I've got my ideas on what I would like to tackle, which is the South Tees multi-agency and the corporate parenting strategy. But it's a panel. It's our panel. So I would like to hear everybody else's opinion on what we should tackle this year and what we should take on. Sorry if I didn't make myself clear there. But if there is anybody who wants to put one of these forward and champion one of these subjects, then this is what we're here for today. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, I'll put in 3, and then people can whittle them down if they want to. So youth services, we've had presentations from various youth services saying that we are possibly at a point where we could lose them. I think we need to assess what impact they're having, and what impact there would be if we were to lose them. As Sue rightly said, permanency is one of her favourite words. So sufficiency and permanency surely is one that we must cover. And then locality work, no, actually I'll change my mind actually halfway through. Yeah, because if that's going to have an impact in probably 2 of our most deprived wards, we should probably work out if it's something that's good for everyone, and also what effect it has on the social workers, not only the people that they're helping, but the social workers themselves.
Thanks, Councillor. Can I bring in Councillor Wright, please?
Thank you. The South Tees multi-agency children's hub, but I'd like to put forward the custody and pace beds issue. I think there's still a considerable amount of scrutiny that doesn't happen for Cleveland Police, and I think the sort of inadequate Cleveland Police and inadequate children's services creates a very interesting dynamic, which is unique, I think, across the country. I don't think any other local authority is in the position of having both rated inadequate. It's also one of the areas on our improvement plan which isn't progressing as quickly, and not because of our children's services, but because of Cleveland Police. So I'd like to put forward that that's an area where we should have greater scrutiny and greater focus as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jeanette Walker.
I need an assistant here. Amount of paper I've got. Yeah, thank you, Chair. The one, I think I agree with the youth services myself. I mean, that was my suggestion actually originally with the youth services, because of how that's changing. I know that's been in the news of just recently with Councillor High regarding the children's youth services coming back into Middlesbrough Council, and I just want to see how we're going to deal with that with the agencies that there are. There's obviously a lot of youth work been going on that hasn't been totally supported by the Middlesbrough Council. So it will be interesting to see how we can progress and keep the ones that we've got that are running well, and make sure that it's very effective, because we haven't looked after our young people up to then. And also, I agree with Councillor Wright, the custody and pace beds, that is very important, because obviously with the with it being the Cleveland Police as well, that is a section that we can actually look at as a scrutiny. And I believe those two, definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Mick Saunders.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm sure we all agree that they're all important topics, and I'd like to maybe look at this no wrong door, especially maybe Graham might come into that. You know, with this new building in Thorntree and East Middlesbrough, it's prioritising like bringing children back into the town. Hopefully, I'd like to see how that performs. I mean, so you said hopefully they'll get the keys very soon. And I'd also like to look at the services that the council provides for children with disabilities. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Anybody else want to comment? Any of the councillors want to comment before I bring Rob back in? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'd like to mix it. The no wrong door in Thorntree. I think that one's what's to be looked at and sort of carefully monitored, especially after what's happened over this last week or so in the park itself. I know it's fetching people back into them, but how long? What sort of statue is it? Are they there for any length of time, or it's like just overnight thing with this programme? Can you answer that one?
Yeah, with it being a hub, I think it's an ongoing thing with residents. But I'll ask Rob. Rob, can you answer that question, please?
Could you repeat that, please, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah. How many beds has it got? 6 beds, 12 beds? How long are these people going to be in there for? Is it a one night overstay, no night overstay, or a week or two, or a month or two, or is it just a passing through type of thing?
It's respite. Yeah.
Sue, I'll let you answer.
Sorry, Rob. It's respite, Councillor Wilson. So it should be short term. It shouldn't be. So it would be maybe to give the family a bit of a break, to let things cool down. All of those sorts of things. So it should also be quite assessed. But it's not just about residential home. It's about outreach work. It's about working with children who aren't actually staying overnight. So it's not a children's home as such. It's a way of working. It's a whole system way of working with children and young people.
Am I thinking then, or the information I've been given, you've got a social worker and a police officer staying there overnight, 7 nights a week?
You will if young people are there and sleeping overnight, there will always be somebody looking after them, residential worker looking after them. I'm not aware that there won't be a police officer there overnight. There are representatives of the police working in the hub, but no, we don't have police officers staying in children's homes. That wouldn't be appropriate.
That's just the information I've been given, so that's fine. And hopefully it should work out then in that respect.
I'm hoping so.
Respite, if it's respite, you might do good. I was a bit concerned because the local kids that there's like congregating around there, because obviously you can't keep the kids locked up inside.
No.
And start mixing the local kids. Well, it could sort of take them the wrong direction that we didn't want.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
So can I just come in on that, just for my clarification? There will be a police officer allocated to liaise with the hub, though there is an involvement with an individual police officer. It's just that he's not sat in the actual hub. He's just given to the hub, and that's his remit. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a data analyst as well. There's all sorts of professions in there. It is a multi-agency team, so they complement each other. Yeah. So, for example, there's a psychologist. We call them life coaches. There's all sorts of skills going into that hub to prevent young people coming into our care.
Yeah. That's what I understood it, and I think that's where Councillor Wilson understood it from the original pitch when we were talking about it last year. The police officer was mentioned, but he's not actually on site. Thank you. Councillor Cook?
It was just Chair. It's Rob.
Sorry, Rob. Yeah, I'll bring you back in.
On Councillor Wilson's point, the police role, as I think you've said already, it's around liaison, etc. It's not there kind of to stand guard on the door. So it's not necessarily a post that will be required overnight. This is about working with the young people developing it, if there is intelligence there that needs to be developed, around exploitation or anything like that, to just ensure those children are as safe as possible.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, Rob. Actually, it's I know where you come from. I just know what the local regs are like around that area. I think, okay, we don't really want them walking around the park and then meeting with the crowds around there. Like the problem we've had one there this last week, it's horrendous. So I just want to make sure that wouldn't be happening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Councillor Cook, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, I found my fourth one. The DFE longitudinal study of local authority and children and families, social workers. Even if we didn't do that as a study itself, I just do think that there's some merit in that idea that we once talked about of having the diary of a social worker. Even if we just had one meeting focused on bringing them into, or just even bring the diaries in to say, okay, this is what a day looks like in these different types of social workers. Just to try and get an idea of what their caseload is like and how their day goes.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor, did you bring that? Did you say that title without using the word that I couldn't say there, or did you bring it in?
Brought it in and said it perfectly.
Excellent, thank you. I thought you might. Councillor Wright, can bring you back in.
Well, arising from a discussion that's just been, I wonder if an interesting topic might be to examine the perceptions of people. The perceptions of the public with our children who are in care. So it's quite an outdated report now, but 2009, the Ofsted published a report called Care and Prejudice, which found that 50% of young people who are in care feel like the public view them as bad and uncontrollable. And obviously we know that when we open children's homes in Middlesbrough, the ongoing perception is that it will lead to an increase in crime and antisocial behaviour and things like that, which is simply not true. So I wonder if another interesting topic for us to investigate is the public's perception of children who are in care.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. That is actually something that that could make a difference. Actually, that they're bringing that topic up. Councillor Cook wants to come back in. Councillor Walker, have you got your hand up? Sorry, yeah, Councillor Cook.
I'd just like to support Councillor Wright's idea. I think that's an absolutely excellent idea.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on the topics? Right. Okay. At this point, if I could bring Sue and Rob back in and just to give your overview on some of these subjects and any that you think are more important than others that need our attention now. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Rob and I had some discussion about this before the meeting started. For us, the only show in town really is the improvement journey and the improvement plan. So our ask would be that the topics that you look at are clearly and totally aligned to the improvement plan, because I think for us at the moment in this tricky stage of the improvement journey, that the more that we can discuss the improvement plan and actually make sure and you can scrutinise the progress that we're making against the improvement plan and increase knowledge of the improvement plan, the better for us, because that's everywhere that we get scrutinised. So, Ofsted is scrutinising us, the Department of Education is scrutinising us, you are, the improvement boards. So the more things are firmly allied to the improvement plan for us, the better. I think also there's some overlap here in that the corporate parenting strategy, there's a corporate parenting board. So is that one, is that duplication? I don't know. You might want to look at it from different perspectives. But the other thing for me would be about and the diary of a social worker starts to get that way. What about, doing a research project of your own, a task and finish group? So you're going out and finding the information and maybe presenting it back to us, a sort of like bit of an appreciative inquiry, so that you can challenge us on the information that you found and actually maybe, score some points on the improvement journey and the improvement plan. I don't know, but that's something that, might be really helpful. Rob, have you got anything else that you want to say?
Just to expand upon that, I think as you rightly pointed out, so we've got additional boards within this. So we've got Scrutiny, we've got Corporate Parent, we've got the Improvement Board. So I think what would be beneficial would be something that was complementary rather than duplication. Now, with the improvement plan being as broad as it is, because of the areas of inadequacy being as broad as they were, that I think everything that members have mooted so far is completely accurate and worthy of scrutiny. However, to do that in a structured way and maybe a sequential way in terms of where are we now and what needs to be scrutinised now, as in what which are areas that we should focus on in the next 3 to 6 months, because things that would be picking up later on down the line, we need the foundation blocks in place now. Possibly mean that closely aligned to the scrutiny, closely aligned to the improvement topics within scrutiny may be beneficial. So I found scrutiny works very well when we've got things that are kind of co-designed and co-critiqued rather than something that's already happened in retrospect. So if we've got areas of, we'll call them spotlight reports within the improvement board, if we've got areas that are focused there, I think it would be very useful if scrutiny could also pass comment upon them areas. So if we're looking at, say, demand, it would be useful for members, first of all, to have a very good overview of where we're at right now within the improvement journey, but also be able to add comments and recommendations against that if you think that there's something that could be improved. And Councillor Wright, for example, played a scenario there where there may be a partner who needs to be held to account. It was in relation to pay spreads. So I think I could see that being very complementary. Going further down the line, I also think Sue's suggestion there that, and I think it came from various members around the table as well, but having areas, topics which you could do an independent piece on. So, for example, no wrong door, and members could go and have a good look at that and come back with recommendations, because we're still in that forming stage with that plan. So that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'm sort of picking up on the. Obviously, it's the way we set the work program out has been the same for a while, and we do it every year. But with this being so different, I think there's room, or there's need for it to be very fluid and very open at the minute, rather than just setting something out, saying we're going to do that then, we're going to do that now. It needs to be quite fluid. I am quite to say that we need to name some subjects that we're going to explore. We need to put something down on paper during this meeting. I will say that Councillor Story has also give a shout out to Councillor Wright's care and prejudice idea. She's behind that as well. Which, I mean, so we've got three panel members who think that's a great idea. So that's something I think we're going to have to explore. Councillor Watt, I'll just bring Councillor Dodds in before you because she hasn't spoken. Councillor Dodds.
Yes, I would like to say that I would also like to follow what Councillor Wright has asked for, because I think children in a children's home, people do think of them as, oh, you've been naughty and that's why you're being put away in a children's home. People don't think that it isn't the child's fault. It isn't always a child's fault, and you've got to look at the whole picture. And I do think that it would be a good subject to discuss. Thank you.
Councillor Walker, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I totally agree, and I think that Craig's hit the nail on the head there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of prejudice out there towards children in care, and I think that's why a lot of the times when children leave care, they prefer not to tell people where they've been or why they don't live with their parents, etc. And I think it's because of prejudice against them, and they automatically assume that they're the children, they're the problem, and they're not. They are the result of problems. And I think that is unfortunate. That's the innocence of them. So I think we do need to examine that. It would be a very interesting subject, I think.
Chair,
yes.
If we're going to do that, which I think is a great idea, can we align it with something in the plan so it sort of like kills two birds with one stone? So, you know, people's view of like social workers, people's view of children who are looked after. So could we bring that in with no wrong door, or could we bring that in with sufficiency? So we're actually doing two things then. so we're looking at perceptions and something that's concrete in the plan. So that would add value in two different ways.
Yeah, you've actually you've saved me saying it there, because.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
No, it's all right. This is what we're here for. Because of the panels, this is all about this scrutiny panel, and it's a democracy, and we're asking people what they want to look at. No Wrong Door and Councillor Wright's recommendation seem to be the two overwhelming ideas to start with. So if we bring the Councillor Wright's idea in with the No Wrong Door and go from there, would you agree, Councillor Wright, on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it connects very closely with the issue of permanency and sufficiency of place as well, and especially about bringing our children home to Middlesbrough. This is one of the issues. Barriers to opening new children's homes and things like that. So I think that would work very well together, and the No Wrong Door approach as well.
Excellent. Sue, would you like to come back in there?
I think that's absolutely spot on. I think because it's as I say, it adds value in two different ways. It's very child centred, but it's also looking at what we can do to make sure that children's lives, that children reach their potential, and that their time in care is a good one, and that we move them to permanency as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it also gives it more dimensions to the topic to get our teeth into, rather than it being just a flat one-off. We're looking at this and then going from there. There could be there's probably other ways, other ideas that were brought forward that could fit into that as well. So yeah, that's definitely an idea to put forward. Would anybody else like to say anything before I bring Joe back in? No, excellent. So Joe, at this point we've got the main. I did want to look at the South Tees multi-agency and go from there, but overwhelmingly I think the panel have decided that we're going to go and start off with the No Wrong Door, the programme, looking at that and incorporating the Councillor Wright's idea. We could also deal with youth services to start off with, and then keep quite fluid on what we're dealing with, rather than setting in stone titles of what we want to look at when everything's changing so quickly. I think if we start off with that and go from there, would everybody agree with that? Joe, would you agree with that?
I think that's a good idea, Chair. Yeah, I think the main purpose of putting a couple of titles on paper is for the Overview and Scrutiny Board to approve what the panel's doing this year. But I think if we start off with those couple of suggestions and then just keep an eye on how it's moving throughout the year, and we can take anything back to OSB if we need further approval to look at anything else.
Yeah, and that shows that this scrutiny panel is adapting to the current climate, rather than just doing what we've done in the past, and making sure that we're on top of things we need to be on top of, rather than committing ourselves to things that are changing all the time, and also the subjects that might come in. So is everybody happy with what we've agreed here today? Anybody else like to say anything? I'll bring Councillor Saunders in.
Yes, Chair, thanks. I'd just like to make it clear. So how many, well, it's more or less for Sue really, Chair. How many topics have we got on the list now?
Well, we've got two main ones, haven't we? And then we're moving on from that. Joe, is that your understanding?
Yes, so that's what I've written down with the Rights idea and linking it into the sufficiency and permanency with the No Wrong Door. So it's quite a big area, really, isn't it? That we're going to be looking into, and youth services. That's what I've taken note of.
So we're keeping it fluid, Councillor Saunders. We're keeping it open to move on to the next thing. Once this is done, rather than just putting things down on paper and tackling them later on in the year. That's what we're doing. Councillor Dodds, then Councillor Wilson, please.
No, it's okay. It's already been answered.
Excellent.
I just wanted to say I agree with what we were doing.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just one, Lee. Custody and pace beds, could that not be linked in as well? In sort of in the way of stop youth reoffending in that way around, because you get a lot of them who reoffend. That could come under youth services as well.
Yeah, when I said there would be going on from linking council rights idea to the no wrong door, with what goes on in the hub, if you understand what goes on in the hub as a whole, then nearly all of these topics sort of trickle in to it. So we'd be open to probably from answering questions on one topic, we'd be getting answers from another as well, because we'd be asking the right people, and we'd be getting information from those people as we go along. So I think you're right. Yeah. Anybody else? Councillor Cook.
Sorry, just to clarify that, we shouldn't be trying to link because people are in care that they are youth and reoffending. Like, that's the sort of public perception that we need to try and work away from. And that's exactly why we need to cover that topic.
Could I just put a point of clarity for anyone who's wondering what pace beds are? So Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, and then there's a bit within the Children's Act, and both those two things interlink, and they say that if a young person's arrested and charged, then the local authority, the young person should not be spending their time in custody, so they should be, until that conviction, they should be housed with the local authority within accommodation. So that's the PACE protocol. In Middlesbrough, when the local authority, when Ofsted came, that area was found to be lacking. Since then, a steering group's been established across the whole of the region with Cleveland Police, with other local authorities that we lead on, and a PACE protocol has been developed. And now that's been enacted to ensure that young people always get the offer that's open to them. And that probably will come out, I think, I'm not sure who said that earlier, I think it was yourself, Chair. That'll probably come out in the evidence gathering as you go through the various processes, because partnerships are linked, the improvement plans linked, and you start kind of going through each bit. Yeah, cheers, Rob. I meant as in information that we're gathering, Councillor Cook, not linking it and saying this is part of it all. When we come out, when we do come out with our findings and our recommendations on councillor rights idea, it won't be something, it won't be something we had to. We'll be given this perception of care and prejudice, and during our exploits in looking into that, other questions will be answered on the rest of going further on into the topics for information. Anybody else? Excellent. So I think we're all agreed on that, and it's two exciting topics, because ever since I'm pretty sure as a panel, ever since we heard about the No Wrong Door project, we were all excited about it. So I'm quite happy that we're going further into it and not just leaving it from last year. So that's great. Sorry, I've got that much paperwork. Right, guys, so we're going to move on to item 6 on the agenda, if everyone's happy to move on. Proposed schedule of meetings for 2021. Can I bring Jo in?
Hi, Chair, thank you. It was just, there's a list being sent out to the panel members of proposed meeting dates for the rest of this year. Obviously, we've got a recess in August, so they'll start back up in September. And it's just to get the panel's approval for those dates, please, Chair.
Has everybody seen the dates and is happy with the dates? Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, just let you know that I'm away on holiday on the 14th of September, so my apologies if you're going for that one.
All right, okay, thank you.
How do you feel that one?
Look at you.
Check me chances, Carolyn and Benidorm. Somebody twist the arm.
Oh, well, you'll have a good time there, no doubt, yeah.
I certainly hope so.
Got taxis in Benidorm.
Excellent. So, brilliant. So we'll move on to item number 7, which is the overview and scrutiny board update. Jo, I think you've did you tackle that, or do you want me to tackle that because I missed one? Your mic's still on, off, Joe.
2 seconds. It was just to update members on needs that have been held since our last formal meeting in March. So during the lockdown period, Overview and Scrutiny Board has met on the 21st of May, the 11th of June and the 2nd of COVID recovery and response, the local area break plans. We've had also updates from Sue in relation to children's services and also on health, adult social care and public health. We've heard from the exec member for environment and received an update from the mayor. So there's been quite a lot going on.
Thanks, Joe. Guys, the reason why I asked Joe to give that update was because I'd missed one, and I was only partially there in the second one. So thanks for that, Joe. I appreciate that. Right, so item number 8. Is there any other urgent items? Is there any other urgent items? There isn't, is there, Joe? There isn't.
Sorry, is my microphone on or off? I can't.
It's off. It's on now. Yeah.
I keep pressing it. I don't know if it's on or if it's off. No, we have no urgent items.
So that just. Sorry, go on, Joe.
No urgent items.
Excellent. So that just leaves me to thank Rob and Sue for coming today. Thank you for being open and honest as always. Thanks for the support staff, the officers who are here to support us in these online meetings, and thanks for everybody else who attended. And that just leaves to shut the meeting down. And thank you, and good evening to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Where's my thing gone?